Welcome to Derry and the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down episode 4. We are back with an episode that answers a lot of questions, and it has a lot of Easter eggs, hidden details, and nods to the book. It also features a scene that made me feel a bit sick. I know, you know what I'm talking about, and I think every kid had that fear where they'd get their tie pulled into the lathe during woodwork. So lots of happy flashbacks to that. The new entry has a lot going on with it, and where we pick up in the aftermath of last week. There we ended with the kids managing to snap a picture of Pennywise. In a scene that's very reminiscent of the Losers Club riding through the town in chapter 1 and 2, they rush through the centre of Derry to head to Chief Bowers. As they turn the corner, we can see Nan's luncheonette, which also featured in Stephen King's Needful Things, which rhymes.
But I'm not a rapper.
Across the street we have Palmer's, which may be a nod to Chase Palmer, who wrote the original screenplay for it. Next to it we have the Jade Orient, which is the Chinese that later appeared in chapter 2, albeit somewhere different. We also have the Quality Meats and the Arrowhead Hotel. This might be a nod to the mist, as the military project there is called Project Arrowhead. As we reverse the shot, we get a better look at the other signs and can see McMurdy Studios. James McMurdy was a character in Under the Dome, which is something King also penned. We also have wood repairs, but I couldn't really relate that to anything beyond it being very generic, but let me know below if there's an Easter egg that springs to mind. As they pass over the bridge, we also see the river running underneath it. This of course links to the sewers, and it's something that later appears when Will goes fishing. Many people have drowned in this river in Derry, or that's at least what the story was. But yeah, a lot of them were grabbed by Pennywise and their bodies then floated down the river. Arriving at the chief's, surprise, surprise, he doesn't bloody believe it.
I don't believe it!
He even plays a prank by pretending to see something before turning the photo around. This is something that we actually theorized last week, but to be honest, it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to stop the clown, because yeah, we've all seen chapter 1. There's also the fact that Lily's been in a mental asylum several times, and yeah, you can see why you just brush it to the side. It also goes beyond just simply being a photo, and the adults can't actually see anything. There's nothing there, and despite Pennywise being in the last one, the adults just see a statue. In the book, Bill has a photo album in Georgie's room that he sees blood coming out of, and his parents can't see it at all. It's also similar to how Alvin Marsh can't see the blood in the bathroom. The adults are often blind to whatever Pennywise is doing, which further isolates the kids and makes them seem crazy, or like they're just wasting time or just making shit up. Lily's then threatened with Juniper Hill Asylum once again, and they're told to stay out of police business. I do wonder if they might find more help at the army base, and in this episode Leroy sees firsthand what's going on with Will. It's a far cry from what usually happens, as the parents are normally deaf to their kids' pleas. However, this kind of throws a curveball and makes it seem like they might actually have some adults on their side for once. We'll talk about that more in just a bit, but firstly a quick word from our sponsors and then we'll get into the rest of the episode. So Welcome to Derry plays a lot on nostalgia and how certain memories can be linked to certain things. That includes smell, and you can often be taken back to a time in your life. For me, 212 always takes me back to my holiday in Ibiza as a teenager, when life was just about partying and having a good time. Scentbird is something I've been using for about a year now, and it's an amazing subscription service that lets you choose from over 900 designer and niche fragrances without the price tag. Every month you'll receive these vials full of the sprays you've chosen. They're compact and also have a travel lock function, so they're perfect if you want to go on holiday without taking a full bottle. Because I'm sure we've all got to the hotel in Ibiza and went to unpack and realised we've spilt our 212 all over our clothes. Yay! Money down the drain! Scentbird stops all that though, and it also means you're not locked into the same scent for sometimes years at a time. Or days if it spills all over your bag. What it does though is allow you to try the spray without paying for it outright. So you're not locked into something you don't like. You also get these cards with every vial that outline some info on the fragrances. So this tells me that Heretic Midnight Toga has a mix of tobacco laced with clove and vanilla. We also have Leather Vintage label number 1 Private Reserve, which has clementine, cedarwood and sun-aged leather. There's also Maison Louis Marie number 2 Le Long Fond. Along with this, I also got Givenchy Gentleman's Society. Every month, Scentbird change their fragrances of the month, so you'll always have something to look forward to. So yeah, huge thank you to them for improving how I smell, and if you want to try it out yourself, they've got a great offer with 55% off your first month when you use my code SPOILERS3 or scan the QR code on screen right now. You get to try the first fragrance from Scentbird for only $8.97, and your next month will be only $17.95. Again, that's spoilers 3, or scan the QR code on screen, and yeah, that means you can start your own scent arc without dropping a blockbuster budget. Huge thank you again to Scentbird. Now let's get back to the breakdown. And from here we cut to the school gym and Ronnie compares it to Dracula. She says you couldn't see the vampire's reflection in the movie, which might be the 1931 Universal Classic or the 1958 Hammer Horror version. It's of course also basically her grabbing references from the thing that she loves, which is of course the cinema. Dracula and vampires also get a nod in the book as Pennywise appears resembling Kurt Barlow from Salem's Lot, aka Dracula. In the vision, it has a mouth filled with razor blades that cut open its gums every time it speaks. It also appeared as some of the classic monsters of old in the book, and this included a werewolf and also the creature from the Blue Lagoon. Will then says that he wants to find out if there was a history of something like this happening in Derry before. In case you don't know, in the book, Mike was actually the amateur historian, not Ben. He was the one fascinated with the town, and it was kind of a shame Mike got brushed to the side for the movie version. With that in mind though, this might be the show's way of trying to fix the change made in the movie, especially as Mike is Will's grandson. We've watched as they're doing something similar with Rose, and in the movie, Beverly got captured by Pennywise, whereas in the book she was slingshotting the twat with loads of different rocks and stuff. Or it was a silver, I think it was melted down silver, it was a silver bullet or something. Either way, Ronnie mentions that Lilly could ask her mother if she's heard of any weird things that have happened in the past. Rich rightly says there was nothing that would get the adults to believe them, but luckily, Lilly has a mate who does. She catches up with the head of housekeeping from Juniper Hill, who remembers that some kids went missing in the 30s. This was something that coincided with the Great Depression, which was one of the lowest points in America. Actually, just watch John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, might be doing a breakdown soon, and there they mention that there were bodies piled high in the streets. Gone were the roaring 20s, and on October 24th, 1929, aka Black Thursday, the stock market crashed. I'll save you the economics and history lesson, but essentially people became dirt poor overnight. But yeah, it was basically about borrowing money to buy stocks on the margin and lending it to people who had no capital, but thankfully that'll never happen again.
Hey, there's a bubble.
But yeah, during the 30s, kids went missing overnight and people assumed they'd left the town to live a better life. So this is why it wasn't a huge mystery like 1962 and 1989. She says though that with good friends anything is possible, which is something her father told her. Now if you watched our breakdown last week, you may recall that we think she's Mrs. Kirsch. So that means her father was Pennywise the dancing clown. This is someone that it became, and using this persona it then lured kids in. This ended up becoming its favourite form, and we have met Stanley Kirsch in the show during episode 2. But I did theorise at the time it might have been Pennywise. Look, I know I say every adult is Pennywise, but I think that was Pennywise. Especially because of the red paper and string meat packets that resembled the balloon. I'm not crazy, you hear? I do wonder if she is revealed to be Mrs. Kirsch, then if that means that that is indeed its form rather than her father. Or brother. I don't know mate, age is kind of everywhere on it. And yeah, it just kind of speaks to the economy we live in when even a glamour from the Macroverse has got to get a job to survive this economy. Now, we can also see she's wearing red, and the circles on her blouse could be little balloons. That might be reaching, I'll be honest, but it could explain why she can remember the previous cycles and believes Lilly while others don't. As we've been mentioning in a lot of our breakdowns, they have basically said that season 2 is going to be set in the 30s, season 3 is going to be 1908, and if she's the kid who was at the circus, then we could see her, young Rose, young Shaw just messing around as kids. Now, if we go back to that, I do think that she probably saw the creature masquerading as her dad and realised there was something wrong with the town. She does deny though seeing anything like Lilly, but we also know Pennywise can make you forget. Even Bill in the book says he barely remembered what happened to Georgie, and it was only after Mike's call that he recalled he was murdered. Before that, he just vaguely remembered he had a brother, and then all of a sudden he didn't. And that was the end of it. He didn't really know why he didn't have a brother all of a sudden. So I do wonder if Kirsch's memories might come back and we could see more of the things from 1908. Because yeah, I think that little girl was indeed her. Now, as you know, Pennywise also takes her form down the line, and this series could be showing how that happens. The Derry curse is real though, and while Leroy and Charlotte believe Will, they are new to the area, so they may not have been fully put under the Derry spell. Either way, we then go to Charlotte looking at the newspaper. The paper leads with Hank being arrested and blamed for the cinema massacre. They also use a racial word to describe him, rather than just saying like, local man arrested. This kind of shows how they're weaponizing racism at the time to play on people's prejudice and make them assume he's guilty. Like, you wouldn't see the headlines say local white man, so it just kind of furthers the divide. What this does though is get Charlotte thinking. As we see, she later helps Hank with his due process. Right at this moment, Rose shows up with the furniture she bought. Mrs. Hanlon asks her about her family, and Rose explains that her ancestors are from the area but roamed all the way to Nova Scotia. However, manifest destiny ruined all of that. It's a phrase that was first written by John L. O'Sullivan in 1845 that expressed a desire to spread westward and colonize every part of North America. It is something we later see, and again, it's another part of Derry's history from the book. Now, though she's doing some great deliveries, Rose is actually here to probe into what the military's really doing. Shaw lied last week and said they were doing oil surveys, but she clearly knows
that was a fucking lie.
As we find out later, she's actually sent him to a bunch of spots where there's zero connection to Pennywise. And I love the duplicity with the character. She's kind of being friendly to everyone, but trying to keep the secrets of the city safe while stopping them from discovering the truth. Mrs. Hanlon says how Leroy keeps lots of secrets, and there's clearly something more to Shaw's plans than what he told Rose. She then hints that something bad's going on in Derry and tells Charlotte to keep the people that she loves close. I suspect that the kids may speak to her in a future episode, and she may even die in the series. I do still believe that Daniel's a Native American guy that we see in It Chapter 2, where Mike basically goes to learn the ritual of Chud. So if that is true, he at least lives long enough for that. With Rose, though, all bets are off the table. And she then gives Charlotte her phone number and says to call if she sees anything spooky. No doubt she will be straight on the phone to her, considering Will has 2 Pennywise encounters this episode. We then cut to Dick and his friends, who are on their way to check out their new hangout. After his encounter with Pennywise last week, Shaw granted him any favour he wanted. This is something Halloran instantly took him up upon after his tent had a major leak and his friends wanted him to use his special privileges. A storm always precedes the coming of Pennywise, and this was an omen that he was indeed in the town. But yeah, it's kind of pushed them to this place where they're clearly going to make the black spot, and Pennywise coming down and causing the leak, pushing them here. It's going to make some sense later on in the series, I think. But yeah, a bit stupid asking for this, mate. You could have had this.
2 chicks at the same time, man.
But now they've been given an old requisition shed, which is just like the books. They can't drink in town as Chief Bowers has pressed the barkeep to kick them out, so now they're going to make the best joint in Derry. It is a little bit different from the book, as Mike's dad Will was one of the soldiers who helped found the black spot. This was due to the town council pressuring Major Fuller to stop the black guys from drinking in town. However, due to them changing lots of things with the timeline, such as, Mike being a kid whose dad died in the fire, Will not being a soldier, and Leroy being his grandfather who looks after him, they've changed lots of things about. And yeah, Leroy isn't involved in the setup of the black spot like how Will was in the book. Now, as they're driving to the building, we can hear What I'd Say by Ray Charles. This song is foreshadowing this place will soon become the best nightclub in town. It all kind of ties back to episode 1 when Leroy and Paulie stepped off the plane and were saying there were no good Chinese restaurants and no good clubs or bars or something. But yeah, in the book we learn that people from the town turn up, and eventually this drew the ire of the Legion of White Decency. As they enter, we also see the fence signs state, "Danger, keep out," and as we can see, this is a wooded area. As we later learn, the West Wood is where it is contained. So I do wonder if this building is part of that area, and ultimately why things don't go according to plan. We will once more have a spoiler section at the end of the video where we discuss this more in detail, but yeah, I'm sure if you go, it's difficult to avoid it at this point. Like, the book's like, I don't know how many years old, and we keep talking about it every week, but it's very important. But yeah, this being in Pennywise's territory, I feel it's very ominous, and as we see, Dick starts to get visions. Anyway, the soldiers show up at this old rundown building packed with stuff that even the military doesn't want, which kind of shows what they also think about their black soldiers. However, they're miles away from the base, so they can pretty much do whatever they want, and they think no one's gonna bother them. Maybe a mess, but they can make it into what they want, and one of them mentions putting a grill or hot plate so they can make their own food. What they're planning is pretty much similar to what we get in the books, as there they had a grill and deep fryer as well as a bar. Dick actually cooked at this, and it sort of laid the groundwork for him becoming the cook at the Overlook.
Hey, Halloran, maybe you could get like a grill or a hot plate or something. We could turn this into a kitchen. Throw a little chow down for the fellas.
It also reminds me a lot of Sinners, where Smoke and Stack set up their own joint. Right now, there's a hell of a lot of work to do, but Dick starts to feel something that could be foreshadowing seeing his grandma in a vision later on. Or it may be foreshadowing the greater story with the black spot from the books, which we will talk about in our spoiler section. We then go to the school and see the kids watching an atomic explosion PSA. This of course plays off the opening credits where we have the teacher playing something similar. The hand holding this machine is also Pennywise, and it plays in the atomic scare at the time. Now, this film is titled Duck and Cover, and it was a real movie released during 19 1352. Contains Bert the Turtle, who was seen in episode 1 as some poor kid had to dress up as the character. Though it's a real film, this is referencing Maturin the Turtle, who is the rival and opposite to Pennywise. They existed together within the Macroverse, and the turtle then vomited up our universe, which is now where it sails through the space. Yeah, was a lot of coke being done at the time of writing this novel. But yeah, that's where all of King's books take place, and I know we've mentioned it a lot of times in our breakdowns, but just in case you haven't seen them, that's the short version of it. Anyway, it, or the Deadlights as it's known, came to this world and then caused havoc. The turtle ended up guiding Bill and basically psychically told him that it was scared of him. So Bill was advised to battle it with Maturin's mental fortitude and faith. The movies never included this, strangely enough, and instead they opted to basically do the ritual of Chud, but a less complicated version. For the films, it was also changed to a Native American ritual, whereas in the book, it was performed by the Himalayans. However, this is why they keep showing us turtles throughout the show, and it's usually in little things like the stuff on Lilly's bracelet. This was also picked by Maddie, and I did wonder last week if this may have protected him due to the fan theory that he was still alive. Speaking of Deadlights, we've also just launched our new Deadlights t-shirt based on the original poster of The Thing. It's one of my favourite designs that we've ever done, and it's also accompanied by this brand new Losers Club one as well. We also have our Dancing Clown one and the Derry Balloon one as well. The more you buy, the more of a discount you get, and huge thank you to everyone who's picked one up. Lilly then spots her mate looking at her and smiling, which seems like the friends may rekindle their friendship, yay! However, it's all just a trick by Patty to basically bully her, and it leads to a horrendous scene. Rushing home, Will's mum's found the photos that he and his friends took. Luckily though, he didn't have a copy of Razzle hidden away in his sock drawer like your boy here. He ends up telling her the truth though, and how he's trying to help clear Ronnie's dad of the charges. The truth about the graveyard ghost spills out, and this only spurs her on to help Hank even more. The truth is kept from his dad though, as he still thinks he was around at a friend's house. Instead, Charlotte mentions how he fancies a girl to reduce the tensions in the room. He just wants to get away from dinner right away, and I loved how Leroy fishes to see what the girl's like. We've seen how the pair have somewhat of a strained relationship, as Leroy just wants him to like baseball and heavy spoilers and stuff, but Will wants to read science books like an idiot. He seems apprehensive, but the guys end up going fly fishing. This appears to be on the Kenduskeag, which is mentioned several times in the book. It's a hunting ground of Pennywise, and a lot of the kids that were killed were found floating face down in it. Hence the phrase, they all float. I also wonder if they're in the Western Wood where it resides. The area is similar to where Dick's new hangout's located, and we don't know exactly how far the territory stretches. Leroy teases him about Ronnie, and they almost catch a fish together. However, Will is left alone, which is when Pennywise loves to strike. A koi fish comes floating in, which Will is of course mesmerised by at first. Koi fish were first introduced into America about 100 years ago, but even now, they're still seen as pretty exotic, mainly due to them being reserved to koi ponds and koi farms. So Will, seeing this, immediately catches his eye, kinda like the balloons that Pennywise uses to distract its prey. And yeah, if you go back to It Chapter 2, the baseball scene, there's a little firefly that leads the girl into its jaws. So maybe it's good Will doesn't like baseball. The waters then bubble, and Will is grabbed by a vision of his father who's burnt up with white eyes. It's a nightmare he had back when his father was fighting in the Korean War, and it's pretty similar to what we saw in the miniseries. There Ben saw a vision of his dad who had died during that conflict. He appeared over the waters of the Barrens, and then as a skeleton tried to pull him beneath it. In the book, when Mike's an adult, he also thinks about all the forms that it could take. In his mind, the scariest thing it could do is appear with his father's face. So this is kind of Muschetti's version of that. The vision then says, this obviously plays off You'll Float too, but it's been personalised for Will. It's a clever line, as we know that in the future, Will will die in a fire. Leroy then rushes to save his son, and he does start to believe him as he can see the blood in his arms. There's also the mysterious red balloon that's floating at the river. In another nod to Ben, seeing his father, the book said he noticed a balloon floating against the wind. This freaked him out because it was moving unnaturally and started coming directly towards him. In terms of the movies, it plays off the one which appeared to Ben during Chapter 1 in the library. It's both a calling card and fits with the floating message that Pennywise is known for. I think the fact that Leroy can see it might also be because the Hanlons have just moved to Derry and haven't become indifferent and blind like the rest of the adults in town. As we know, when Leroy's much older and he's looking after Mike, He doesn't seem like the friendly, cheery guy that he is throughout here. But yeah, that's likely because his son died, but I do also wonder if it's because Pennywise finally got to him mentally. Leroy might also be able to see the balloon, as he of course knows the military's looking for the entity and saw all sorts of weird artifacts in the special hangar. So he'll naturally believe Will, and it's why later on he goes to confront people at the base. Anyway, we then cut to the police station, where the radio is talking about shipments to Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis is slowly brewing in the background, and this is why Shaw wants to control it. The only way to defeat communism is a billion-year-old cosmic space light from another dimension. Bowers is listening intently and clearly shares the fear that a lot of people have about the atomic apocalypse. Charlotte's here though to report what happened in the graveyard, but she uses it as a pretense to discuss Hank's case. He says how this isn't the South and they're treating him by the book. As we learn though, Charlotte finds a loophole in his case. She then makes her way to a phone booth and we see a sign for the Derry Press. The papers from this have appeared throughout the franchise and the sign's just a nice bit of world building that I appreciate. Across the street we also have the Capitol Cinema, which has closed on the signage. Not really an Easter egg, but just a nice bit of set dressing that keeps up with the story. Charlotte then looks in the phone book, and I checked each of these names to see if there was a hidden Easter egg or a character from another thing, but I couldn't spot any. I spent ages just getting return results. Rick Grimes from Walking Dead. It's not him. He's not connected to Stephen King. But yeah, if you know below, more than happy to read your comments. She then attempts to pry some information out of Leroy's mother. She helped other wrongfully accused men as part of the civil rights movement. Now I thought that the witness was either fake or Lilly said she saw him, so she wasn't sent back to Juniper Hill. However, even Hank's mother thinks that he wasn't in his room that fateful night. It turns out though that he's not talking about where he was for a very good reason, which we'll discuss in just a bit. After this conversation though, Charlotte heads back to the police station and is then spotted by Paulie. It sounded like the family had a lot of trouble in Shreveport, and Leroy no doubt doesn't want her getting involved with any movement up here. Keep saying Shreveport as well. I keep getting flamed in the comments. Write it below how you pronounce it, please. I'll try and get it right next week. We're going to keep trying. No, but this is all a learning experience and I'm just learning and trying to grow. On the wall we have lots of missing posters and all their names are people that worked on the show. In the top left is Peter Bodell, who works in the art department, and this is alongside Daniel Van Helding. We also have trainee assistant art director Joey Bielich, and yeah, nice little Easter eggs there guys, well done putting yourselves in. Charlotte then heads in with permission from Hank's mother to go and visit him, and she goes off and threatens Bauer's deputy with the wrath of the civil rights movement. She brings up Martin Luther King, JFK and RFK and says they'll all come and make it so she can see Hank. The Freedom Riders are also mentioned as well. They were a mixed race group who would ride into state buses to protest segregation. Having little stomach for the media circus that would ensue, the officer then lets her go see Hank. The prisoner hasn't even had a bail hearing yet, which is totally illegal, so because of that he can skip bail and end up on house arrest instead. But she needs to investigate what he was actually doing on the street at the time. He never did anything to the kids, which we do know, but he wasn't in his room. As it turns out though, Hank was doing it with a married woman. Just to make matters worse though, she's a married white woman, and in 1950s Maine, it's one of the worst things he could have done. If the truth comes out, as he mentions, he'd probably get killed for it. And Emmett Till was murdered just 7 years prior, and it was, massively in the public conscious at the time. And kind of, again, playing into the fears of racism that Pennywise is kind of weaponizing. Now, just as we mentioned last week, he's been wrongfully accused, just like Andy Dufresne. That character was sent to Shawshank around this time after he was framed for killing his wife. He found her with another man and was thought to have killed them both. However, in reality, the murderer was a common burglar and poor old Andy was simply just sent down for it. So it's kind of playing upon that, but doing it with the racial commentary attached. Now, if he does get sent to Shawshank, he might even see Red and Andy from that story as well, as the timelines match up. Meanwhile, the lads are cleaning up the future black spot, while You Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover by Bo Diddley's playing. It works here as the guys thought the place looked rubbish and thus they judged it before seeing its full potential. Dick was the one who saw that though. Due to his ability to look into the future, I do also wonder if he has vision like that to help him see potential. Like he's got visions of the future, but he might also have vision of how good it's going to be. Now, the title, You Can't Judge a Book by Its Cover, could also refer to race, as bigotry and stereotypes are sadly applied to these men, which is why they have to drink out in the woods. However, they are making the most of it, and they've got a piano set up, and in the book, they had a little band going with a few of the soldiers. Beyond that, they've got the ability to have booze, which makes it slightly different to the novel. This is because there it happened during the early 1930s, which was the Prohibition era. that basically stopped everyone from drinking though, well legally, and as we know that was eventually overturned. Dick then has another vision of his grandmother and a plug hole flashes in his mind which kind of foreshadows the bathroom we see later on. This is also where Lilly and Bev had an encounter with Pennywise, and the plugs of course lead down into the sewers, which is where the creature lives at. The bathroom door then shuts, and between the flashes the lights then resemble the deadlights. His grandmother then warns him to stay safe and keep that lid on tight. This is referring to the box we mentioned last week, and she taught him to trap the scary undead in one, which he then taught to Danny and Doc to sleep. In the book we learn Dick's grandfather abused him, and even after he died, he'd still continue to haunt him. So I think this might be him either remembering his grandfather abusing him, or seeing him after he died. Or possibly it's a link to Dick seeing Leopold Street later on, like a sort of clue. It's his worst fear though, and the deadlight might end up opening his box and unleashing his grandfather's spirit. Now at the moment, this is merely a warning from beyond the grave, similar to how Dick's ghost helped Danny in the movie version. The flashes then end as Leroy comes to ask Dick about what the heckens is going on. He tells Leroy not to dig too much into what's happening, but Leroy grabs him to try and get the truth. The screen then blurs and Dick has a look of horror on his face. Despite Leroy asking him to stay out of his head last week, Halloran has accidentally peered into his mind. However, I do wonder if this was him seeing Leroy's future. In the book, Dick guides Will out of something major, which we'll talk about in that spoiler section. Most likely though, Dick saw what happened at the river and is playing coy about the whole koi fish thing. Hey. Oh, thank you, I'm the best, I'm the greatest. But yeah, Dick knows that it is targeting children, and it's kind of in his nature to protect kids from these evils. Hence the entire story of The Shining. Halloran has never seen anything like this though, and cracks when Leroy keeps pressing him. He excuses himself and says he's just following orders and doesn't know what he saw, but will eventually find out. Cutting to Will and the others at the standpipe, he then tells the kids about what he witnessed. The kids then share their stories about how they've seen the creature as well, and it's a scene that's also playing off the one in the book and pretty much all the adaptations. Now he correctly theorizes that it wants to scare them first. The adrenaline and cortisol will flood the body, and Will mentions how predators like the taste of it in prey. Something that was also mentioned in the book, and Pennywise liked to induce fear so that the chemicals would quote-unquote salt the meat, which is literally what the text says. Luckily though, it's the 60s and Valium is everywhere, yeah! Lilly steals her mother's mummy's little helper and she hands them out to her mates. These were largely targeted at housewives because, you know, the sexism of the time. But yeah, this was so they could continue keeping the house together and not think bad thoughts. For God's sakes, woman, you're being hysterical. Considering her husband's dead though, and Lilly keeps being sent to the asylum, I cannot blame her for taking them. It was so common at the time though that the Rolling Stones even had a song called Mother's Little Helper. Meth was also marketed as a weight loss drug that helped with depression, and yeah, at the time they were just giving all these drugs out to everyone.
Whenever she's really nervous about stuff, like bills.
Bills being a fear of adults is actually also mentioned in the book, and there it said this is one of the main reasons that Pennywise targets kids. It's just easier to manifest as a scary monster than like showing up as a mortgage payment or like bill collectors at your door, that sort of thing. The kids then decide that when it comes for them, they'll take one and it'll be all gravy. By doing this, they'll stay calm and won't be affected by fear, and it's sort of the same thing that Leroy's been afflicted with. And that takes us to theory time. Theory time, motherfuckers, motherfucking theory time. Yeah, so as we know, Lilly is constantly given threat of Juniper Hill. As we see in the opening credits, this is where they perform lobotomies on kids. So I do wonder if Pennywise will just end up haunting her constantly and she'll smash more stuff than the like button. Her mother may finally push her to get a lobotomy, and this will leave her in a constant state of sedation. It's something that the doctor first brought up when we visited her at the hospital, and the fact they said that line then, being like, this is what could happen, and then we're in a TV show where there's episodes, I do feel like she's probably going to get a lobotomy. However, there will be some benefits to this, and Pennywise won't really be able to attack her. She'll just be in that constant state of like zoned out, and thus the clown will have nothing it can use to harm her. So yeah, that's kind of what I think's going to happen with the character, and it's a fantastic way to show the positive sides of lobotomies. Yay! Anyway, that's into theory time. Theory time. Yes, that's into theory time right there. Cutting to the classroom, we see the seeds of Marge's crash out are laid here and learn about worms that burrow in snails' eyes. This is great! They then flourish and look like flashing antennas, which then cause birds to swoop down and eat them. Fantastic! More stuff I want to know about. Patty then pushes Marge to reconnect with Lilly, but it's only so they can prank her later on. I saw a lot of people thinking Marge would end up corrupted like Henry Bowers, but this episode shows she's really just there to make Lilly look crazy. Shaw then gets desperate as they're no closer to finding the crash site. He plans to trap the kids who keep spying on them though, which catches Taniel out later. He suggests opening the gate so that they're tempted to come in and get a better look at what's going on. We know that Taniel was eager to do more, but Rose said he was needed and she couldn't risk losing him. But like most young dudes, he just can't help himself. Meanwhile, Marge and Lilly have lunch together, and things have changed between them since she got back from the asylum. Seems genuine, but it's all a plot to pretend the jock Tim Flanagan is into her. And Flanagan might be a nod to Mike Flanagan, who often works with Stephen King. He's of course gonna ridicule her in front of everyone, and you can see it's weighing heavily on Marge. Now I know you could have the read, she's a piece of shit, absolute piece of shit, and she deserves to die, mate, but I think the fact the clown attacks shows how vulnerable that she is. Pennywise tends to strike when you're mentally at your lowest or you're alone. She's in the bathroom with Lilly, but it still makes a move. I think this is because, no one gives a shit about Lily's opinion anyway because she seems crazy, and Marge is clearly mentally torn up about the whole thing.
I can't believe Tim likes me.
Which is kind of devastating. She wants to fit in with the patty cakes though, but the price is the humiliation of her childhood friend. It's the typical high school story as well, as Patty's the cheerleader who bullies the weirdo. Marge is then pushed to go into the toilet and make sure that Lilly comes out humiliated. She really wants to tell the truth though, and almost does before her eyes turn into cones filled with worms. Possibly as a way to also make Lilly stop from learning the truth, because she's going to think that guy still fancies her, and when she's at the asylum she'll be like, he still loves me, and then when she comes out, she'll be even more crushed. So yeah, Pennywise is kind of killing two birds with one stone here. It's very reminiscent of King's other absolute classic, Carrie, and there are girls bullied by the in crowd and then humiliated in front of the whole school at prom. This causes her to unleash her psychic powers, but here, the clown's the one who's doing it. Marge then attempts to tell Lilly what's really going on as her eye starts to fill with blood and worms. I don't know what it is about eyes, mate, but ever since I saw the robot transformation in Superman 3, I've hated stuff involving them. She also drops her glasses and we see as one lens smashes while the other one drops out. It's just the one lens that comes out and it foreshadows her losing just the one eye, with this even being the eye that she ends up damaging. Lilly thinks that it's time to pop the pillow, but she ends up dropping it down the toilet, which is ironic considering that Pennywise resides down in the sewers. Marge then runs into the woodwork class and jams a file into her eye before rushing to the jigsaw, which is a great plan. And yeah, hearing it whizzing on and seeing her feet slipping on the pipe, nightmare fuel. The kids then rush in and catch Lilly holding the file, and Marge's eyes have gone back to normal, albeit one's been stabbed by the looks of it. But it's kind of like finding the killer holding the knife. Once again, she's looked at like she's crazy and will probably be kept in the asylum for longer, as it appears like she's hurt someone. Yay for lobotomies! Further plays into the plan to isolate the group though and push them all further and further away. The nurse saying they were stronger together is kind of playing into this, and it's also something the officer said to the kids in the book. There it's because he thought there was a killer about, and that staying together would stop them being easy targets. But obviously we know the killer clown likes to isolate them, and that's why it pushes them to be divided. We then cut to Charlotte chopping tomatoes, which is an absolutely diabolical edit. Leroy then confronts her over helping out Hank. He doesn't want her stirring the pot, which is something she agrees to. Well, to his face at least. The curse seems to be taking him as he wants to turn a blind eye to what's going on in Derry for his own selfish gain. Or it may just be his fears in general due to them having to move. Leroy doesn't want more trouble to be caused by his wife that will draw attention to the family. However, Charlotte says there's always going to be trouble no matter what. Now, I said fear with Leroy, but with him having his condition, I do wonder how that extends. Obviously, Leroy doesn't feel fear as we know it, but this may be in a sort of fight or flight way. I'm guessing that he still gets worried because, he obviously flags stuff with the creatures up to shore. Will then has a nightmarish vision about his dad after staring at the solar system model hanging from the ceiling. I like how the entity came crashing down from space, and then Will has a nightmare caused by looking at a model of it. This theme's then reinforced when he looks through his telescope and gazes at the night sky. Will then moves the telescope down and looks around the streets. This is something his dad wanted to do, but Will said they shouldn't. So he saw Pennywise while doing something that was considered as being wrong. Pennywise looks just like they did in the photo last week, and it's different to chapter 1 and 2. Maybe the clown is currently gaining power, which is why it hasn't spoken to the kids yet. We also see the silver eyes, which were brought up in the book. There they were said to be like silver dollars and are what Georgie witnessed down in the basement. When Dick saw the cistern, only a few kids were floating as well, but in chapter 1, there were lots and lots and lots. So Pennywise might need to feast a lot more before they're the happy, jovial clown from the movies. It also has white hair with bells on it that we saw the kid have in 1908. It's a second scare for Will, and he tells his dad about what happened. Leroy doesn't believe it's a supernatural being though, and just thinks it's someone watching the house. Which, to be fair, as we've seen, the neighbours are constantly looking at him, and Pennywise is likely weaponising this racial fear. Now initially he thinks it's because of what Charlotte's been doing with Hank, and the stalking and harassment are starting again. Which again could be showing that the curse might be getting to him. He then goes out with a fire iron, makes a noise in the street, and I did wonder if this was going to cause issues next week. So yeah, he might be seen as crazy, but it's after he sees the balloon that he decides to confront Shaw to find out just exactly what it is they're chasing. Leroy's then taken to see Daniel, who's about to be interrogated by Dick. The lad spits on Halloran, which means the information is going to be extracted the hard way. Dick holds his hands to his head, and this reminded me a lot of Professor X. The fingers held up to his forehead also look like he's trying to activate his third eye. Initially he starts with 3 digits on it until he eventually slips down to the 1. This is him trying to hold it together, but slowly the control slips away and he's sticking it like that. Now, this finger is thought to represent power, which might be why he does it. In Hinduism, Shiva also referred to the third eye as being the third-eyed lord. Apparently it represents knowledge and the detection of evil, which Dick is doing here. It also appeared a fair bit in Doctor Strange, so yeah, that's where I know it from, mate. Does seem to be quite taxing on Halloran though, as he goes deep into Daniel's mind. I even wondered if Daniel had training to try and resist psychic attacks like this or from it. The ritual of Chud also involves entering the minds of others, and thus it might be something he's adept at. Now why I thought of this was because Daniel seems to resist with quite a lot of force. Both of them end up gripping the table, and it's reminiscent of the moment where Marge gripped the workbench then cut off her eyes. Yay! Dick then enters his mind, and it again looks like the void from Stranger Things.
Right guys, just a bit of an insert here, yeah? Last week on the video I was getting loads of comments going, you said the boy from Stranger Things, and then showed a picture of 11. I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? I don't remember saying that. I literally spent all week looking through the video finding where it was. And then watching back this edit, I realised it was the void from Stranger Things. I didn't say the boy, I said the void. The void, that's what I said.
Each memory is represented by a door, and doors like this are something they've had throughout the franchise. In Newbold Street during Chapter 1, we had a sort of multiple choice thing with lots of doors like this. In Chapter 2, when the Losers Club were fighting Pennywise, they also went hurtling through other doors. Dick then enters one and sees Daniel playing with soldiers and a big bear, which is clearly the favourite toy. Obviously, the colonial forces overthrew his people, so you can see why he'd be playing as the bear beating them. Bears in the spirit of the bears, heavily steeped in Native American culture, and they also represent strength and courage. Now this is the moment that Daniel was told the significance of the tribe and the Western Wood Monster. He's told that the story is actually real and not just a story to make sure kids don't play in the woods. As he tells it, we can also see it crash land. It's just like what Mike saw when the tribe showed him the origin in Chapter 2. Again, telling you that old guy who told him that is Daniel grown up. In the Inside the Episode video on YouTube, Kimberly Norris Guerrero, who plays Rose, she did mention how the tribe is called the Children of Maturin. I fully expect we might actually finally see Maturin when the tribe learns about the ritual of Chud. But yeah, that's a theory, and it then crashed and left parts of the casing material on the ground. This is where the losers fought Pennywise at the end of Chapter 2, and it then escaped the crash site and flew around the woods, with the deadlights going into the sky, just like how they did in Chapter 2. Now the first people then arrived in the area and used parts of what carried it to make a weapon. Considering that it was encased in this rock-like material that scares and traps it, the encasing itself might have been a prison. It's by far the most we've ever learned about the creature, and we see its many forms, including that of the beast that it's encountered on the planet. We see how it can take the form of a moose, and there's a moose loose about this hoose. In the book, Mike's dad also saw it appear as a giant bird after the fire at the Black Spot. It also appeared as wolves and spiders and animals that people found frightening. Now, the tribe initially lived in peace as they never went near the Western Woods. Life was chill, and then the fucking settlers came to the area, and despite being warned, they decided to go and do it anyway. But yeah, they were killed and then used to feed it, which made it more and more powerful. We can also see that a priest was killed, which becomes a very important vision later on. Missionaries attempted to convert the indigenous populations to Christianity, and yet not even the cross protects them from the deadlights. Due to the settlers feeding it, the being was then able to hunt outside of where it landed. I feel like this might be a reference to an event from the book that took place in 1741. The original settlers of Derry actually went missing, which King basically based off the Roanoke colony disappearance. In the book, a total of 340 people disappeared, and it was one of the main mysteries of Maine. The tribe then came up with the idea to leave. However, a girl decided to try and get more stones to make daggers. However, they were followed by her mother and a war party that ended up being wiped out by it. The natives were of course also scared by the settlers, which is why it appeared as zombified colonizers. It then turned into the priest and made itself huge, which we have seen in characters like the Mrs. Kirsch form and also the Skeleton Man. We then see the deadlights and a tiny Jesus baby comes out of the chest of the priest, like a chestburster from Alien. Now it does stand to reason that if a religious group came and killed your people and tried to take your land, you'd be scared of their god. The baby pops out and then stabs her with a spear, and this might be a nod to the Spear of Destiny. This is the lance that pierced Jesus Christ on the side of the cross, and we also see the teeth about to strike before her daughter chases the beast away. Using the dagger, she then went back and made shards to bury around the woods, and this would basically conceal the creature. They also bury the shards in a turtle shell, which again ties back to maturing. Now, since then, the tribe has guarded where the shards are buried, and basically kept the area safe and make sure it never escapes. I do wonder though how it's still able to leave, as clearly it's been just roaming about the town the whole time. Like the whole cinema massacre, and the stuff at the high school, it's clearly these stones ain't working, mate. Not like this stone I've got that keeps tigers away, mate. That always works for me. I do wonder if Pennywise is doing this through the sewers though, and going under the daggers that way. We then see the heroes enter the cave to it, and later on this connects to the sewers in chapter 2. Either way, they want to cage it instead of killing it, and it's possible we saw them bring together these totems in chapter 2 when we see the ritual being explained by Mike. I love how the memory then starts to break though, as Dick interrupts the story and asks where the pillars are. He's just like the settlers who ignored the danger and just did what they wanted. And it's reasons like this why Daniel ended up spitting at him. This is shown expertly though, as we see him creepily smile, and he's far from the force of good that helped Danny Torrance. I did wonder what was going on here as well, as it seems so out of character from the way he's been portrayed in like everything ever. Even the way the eye dropped and he then appeared, I did think, is that Pennywise? I'm telling you, mate, every adult in the show's Pennywise. If it is the creature playing him though, then this could be it finding out where the shards are and then removing them that way. It has used people in the past as puppets, just like Henry Bowers, and potentially it could be getting others to do its bidding. Now we learn that the pillars can be found via the well under 29 near Bolt Street. In the Weeks Ahead trailer, we see the soldiers going into the sewers, so no doubt that's where we're heading next. The sewers themselves are extensive, and according to King, the public works actually lost track of where they were built. As such, many workers and people became lost over the years. They were built after catastrophic floods, which ended up being an underground road network for Pennywise to feast with absolute ease. I think it's going to be a big plot point for episode 5, and likely ramp up to us getting our first look at Skarsgård in the role. Please, it's been 4 weeks now. I really enjoyed the episode again though, and I think the series has done such a great job of fleshing things out. Even just learning about the backstory of the creature and how the tribes fought it, it was an amazing little segue. And yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. Another solid entry, and that takes us to the spoiler section. Yeah, spoilers and shit, we call it. Now, as for what's going on with the Black Spot, well, eventually they do set up a bar, but the Legion of White Decency descend on it and start a fire that burns the whole thing down. Kills over 66 people, and in the book, Dick guides Will out of the fire, which I'm guessing is going to be Leroy in the show. But yeah, he does this using his psychic abilities, so Leroy showing up burned to Will might be foreshadowing that fire. But obviously, we know Leroy survives, so might not, he's going to get out of it. I have faith. Pennywise is seen at the scene of the Blackfire though, and the Weeks Ahead trailer had a massive fire at it. So I do think this will probably happen, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. And don't cut your eyes out if you want to see it. In the meantime though, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please drop a like on the video and also drop a comment with all your thoughts below. If you want to follow us on Instagram, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers, and that's the best way to keep up to date with the channel. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos, and if you click the join button you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. We've set it as low as we can go, but obviously you know the channel's got millions of subscribers. If all of you did it, I'd never have to review a movie again, I tell you that. But no, it helps to pay for the editors. I get all the credit for doing these videos, but there's so many people behind the scenes. John, Steesh, Jaden, Matt, TJ, Griffin, Cade, Lawrence, like lots of people end up working on the videos on the channel, and it just takes the burden off me paying them a good wage that they can live off and have a nice job. So yeah, if you donate to that, thank you to everyone who does it. You know, I don't say it enough, but it really, really means a lot. So thank you. Huge thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring the video, and remember you can get 55% off your first month when you use my code SPOILERS3 or scan the QR code on screen right now. Anyway, with that out of the way, huge thank you for watching this video. If you want something else to watch, we've got a breakdown of another thing on screen right now, and hopefully I'll see you over there right after this. If not though, yeah, I'm sick of you. Get the hell out of here. What do you mean you're watching a 50-minute breakdown? You need to sort your life out, mate. There's priorities here. So yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Peace.